Story 1. The Ghost Ship, Mary Celeste. In 1872, the Mary Celeste, a stout American brigantine, departed New York Harbor on a seemingly routine voyage to Genoa, Italy. At the helm was Captain Benjamin Briggs, a respected seaman with decades of experience. He was joined by his wife Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and a hand-picked crew of 7 experienced sailors. The cargo consisted of 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol, a valuable but volatile cargo. With calm seas and a skilled crew, no one anticipated that this voyage would become one of the greatest maritime mysteries of all time. On December 5, 1872, just a few weeks after setting sail, the Mary Celeste was spotted drifting aimlessly in the choppy waters of the Atlantic Ocean, about 400 miles off the coast of the Azores. The crew of the British ship Dei Gratia, who had seen the Mary Celeste off in New York, noticed something odd about the ship as they approached. It was sailing erratically, and no one seemed to be manning the deck. After hailing the ship with no response, the captain of the Dei Gratia sent a boarding party to investigate. What they found aboard the Mary Celeste was chilling. The ship was completely abandoned. The sails were tattered and flapping in the wind, the ship's clock was broken, and the compass was malfunctioning. Below deck, they found personal belongings undisturbed. Clothes, tools, even the captain's sword. The cargo hold was mostly intact, with only 9 barrels of alcohol mysteriously empty. The lifeboat, however, was missing, suggesting that the crew had abandoned ship, though the reason for this decision was unclear. The ship's logbook was still in place, and the last entry was dated 10 days earlier, noting that they had encountered rough weather, but nothing dangerous enough to warrant abandoning the ship. Meals had been left uneaten, and the captain's cabin looked as if it had been hastily vacated. There was no sign of struggle or foul play, and all the doors were locked from the inside. The eerie calm of the ship only deepened the mystery. Speculation about the fate of the crew ran wild. Some believed that a sudden explosion of the alcohol vapors in the cargo hold had frightened the crew into abandoning ship, fearing it might catch fire. Others suggested a pirate attack or mutiny, though no valuables were missing. More fantastical theories involved sea monsters, underwater earthquakes, or even alien abduction. Perhaps the most unsettling theory was that the ship was cursed, doomed to sail the seas without her crew, a ghost ship for all eternity. Despite thorough investigations by both British and American authorities, no trace of the crew was ever found. The Mary Celeste, meanwhile, continued to sail under various captains for many years, before being deliberately wrecked in an insurance fraud scheme. But even after its final demise, the mystery of what happened aboard the Mary Celeste lingers, forever etched into maritime legend as one of the most baffling and haunting unsolved cases in history. Story 2. The Disappearance of Frederick Valentich. On the evening of October 21, 1978, Frederick Valentich, a 20-year-old Australian pilot, climbed into the cockpit of his single-engine Cessna 182L for what was supposed to be a routine solo flight from Moorabbin Airport in Melbourne to King Island, a small destination across the Bass Strait. Valentich, who had aspirations of joining the Royal Australian Air Force, had logged about 150 hours of flight time, making him a relatively inexperienced pilot. Still, the weather was clear, and the flight should have been simple. But what unfolded in the next hour became one of the most perplexing aviation mysteries of all time. At 7:06 p.m., Valentich radioed Melbourne Air Traffic Control, calmly asking if there were any known aircraft in his vicinity. He reported seeing a large, unidentified aircraft hovering about 1,000 feet above him. According to Valentich, the object had 4 bright lights and was moving at a high speed. Air traffic control confirmed that there were no other known aircraft in his flight path. Valentich, however, seemed certain that something was following him. Over the next several minutes, Valentich continued to radio in updates. He described the craft's movements as erratic, at one point stating that it was orbiting above him. He sounded confused and increasingly alarmed, as the object didn't resemble any conventional aircraft he was familiar with. "It's not an aircraft," Valentich finally said. His transmission grew more frantic as he tried to evade the object, which he said was now hovering above him and emitting a strange green light. At 7:12 p.m., Valentich's voice became panicked. He reported that his engine was stalling, and his final transmission was cut off by a loud metallic scraping sound. After that, radio contact was lost, and Valentich, along with his plane, disappeared without a trace. Search and rescue teams were immediately dispatched to scour the area where Valentich's last transmission had been made. They searched for days, combing the sea and coastline, but no wreckage or debris from the plane was ever found. The investigation revealed no signs of distress in the minutes leading up to Valentich's disappearance. The weather had been calm, and Valentich had not sent any formal distress signal beyond his reports about the mysterious craft. Theories about what happened to Frederick Valentich abound. Some experts believe that Valentich became disoriented while flying over the water at dusk and may have suffered spatial disorientation, leading to a fatal crash. Others speculate that he staged his own disappearance. But the most enduring theory, fueled by Valentich's final words and eyewitness reports of strange lights in the sky that evening, is that Valentich encountered a UFO. Several residents along the Bass Strait reported seeing green lights and strange craft in the sky that night, further deepening the mystery. To this day, no conclusive evidence has surfaced to explain the fate of Frederick Valentich. His disappearance remains one of the most baffling cases in Australian aviation history, and the mystery continues to intrigue UFO enthusiasts and skeptics alike. Story 3. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. In late January 1959, 9 skilled hikers, all students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, embarked on an ambitious winter expedition into the Ural Mountains. Led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, the group set out to reach the peak of Otorten Mountain, a challenging but manageable trek for the experienced adventurers. The group had meticulously planned the journey, preparing for sub-zero temperatures and harsh conditions. They were all seasoned in navigating difficult terrain, which made what happened next even more inexplicable. On February 1st, the group set up camp on the slopes of Kholat Shakal, a mountain whose name in the local Mansi language ominously translates to Dead Mountain. That night, something went terribly wrong. When the group failed to return as scheduled, search parties were sent into the mountains. What they found stunned even the most hardened rescuers. The hiker's tent was discovered first, located high on the slopes of Kholat Shakal. It had been slashed open from the inside, as if the group had fled in a panic. The hikers had left the tent without proper clothing or shoes, despite the freezing temperatures, and their belongings, including warm clothing, boots, and food, had been abandoned. Footprints in the snow, made by bare or socked feet, led away from the tent and into the nearby forest. The first 2 bodies, those of Yuri Doroshenko and Georgy Krivonishenko, were found at the edge of the forest near the remains of a small fire. Both men were barefoot and dressed only in their underwear, seemingly frozen to death. As the search continued, more bodies were found scattered across the mountainside, but the mystery deepened with each discovery. Some of the hikers had suffered traumatic injuries. One had a fractured skull, another had broken ribs, but there were no external wounds to suggest how the injuries had been inflicted. Perhaps the most disturbing discovery was that of Lyudmila Dubinina, whose body was missing her eyes and tongue. Adding to the mystery, investigators found that some of the hikers' clothing contained traces of radiation. There were no signs of an avalanche, no indication of a natural disaster, and no clear explanation for why the group had fled their tent in such a state of panic. The Soviet government conducted an investigation but quickly closed the case, attributing the deaths to an unknown compelling force. Over the decades, numerous theories have been proposed to explain what happened on that fateful night. Some believe that an avalanche, while not immediately evident, may have caused the group to flee the tent in terror. Others suggest that the hikers witnessed a secret military experiment or missile test, accounting for the radiation and bizarre injuries. Paranormal enthusiasts have speculated about everything from UFOs to Yetis. Despite multiple investigations and wild speculation, no definitive explanation has ever been found. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most chilling, unsolved mysteries in modern history, a story that continues to captivate and terrify people around the world.